Ghazghkull is the most notorious orc warlord of the 41st millennium. He believes that he has somehow been blessed by the orc gods Gork and Mork and claims to be in communication with them. Convinced he was marked for great things, within 6 years he had risen to the rank of warboss of his tribe, and soon after that he would raise a war to attack the imperial world of Armageddon. 57 years to the day, Ghazghkull invaded Armageddon for the second time, with an even larger force at his disposal. Though initially conquering half of the planet's surface in an extremely bloody conflict, Ghazghkull allegedly became bored with the fighting. Leaving the settlement of the conflict to the Knobs and lesser warbosses under his command, Ghazghkull left Armageddon in search of a new and more exciting fight. His old enemy, Commissar Yarrick, followed him and vowed to slay the warboss at any cost. Despite being the self-proclaimed prophet of Gork and Mork, there is a possibility that Ghazghkull himself is just a pawn in a large game being utilised as a puppet for another's ends. It is known that Ghazghkull himself would have never come to the position of becoming an orc warlord if it wasn't for the manipulations of the powerful Eldar Farseer, Eldrad Ulthran. It was through Eldrad's foresight that the Eldar began a series of strategic raids against the orcs, culminating in the emergence of Ghazghkull as the most powerful orc warlord in the galaxy, and diversion of his war to the hive world of Armageddon, which would prevent the orcs from assaulting various Eldar craft worlds. Eldrad deliberately instigated the second war for Armageddon, costing the Imperium millions of lives to save 10,000 Eldar. Ghazghkull claimed to be able to communicate directly with Gork and Mork, but what if these gods weren't Gork and Mork at all, but rather the whispers of Eldrad Ulthran himself, manipulating the orc warlord into performing actions that would result in saving the lives of anything between an individual or of hundreds of thousands of Eldar. Eldrad using his powers of divination and manipulation to convince the orcs that he was the voice of the orc gods themselves. Orcs, despite them being intelligent enough to manufacture weaponry and even travel through space and the warp, are considered by other races to be less cognitively sound, the majority of Eldar viewing them as brutish simple barbarians. Because orcs are not anywhere near as cognitively developed as an Eldar, and potentially even less so than a human, tricking an orc into doing what one wishes through the use of a powerful psychic ability is certainly a possibility. However, Ghazghkull was not like other orcs. Ghazghkull was infamous for not only being patient, but incredibly cunning and resourceful. While other orc warbosses would leave from the front lines to get stuck in, Ghazghkull would remain at a distance to command his troops where to go and direct their course of action, engaging in combat only when needed. Now, while this behaviour could be explained by being Eldrad's own influence, taking control at certain points to guide the orc, there is another possibility for this abnormal behaviour as well, and that Ghazghkull isn't actually Ghazghkull, or at least not anymore, but rather, for all intents and purposes, a zombie meat puppet. When Ghazghkull was a lowly orc boy, a mere soldier in an orc tribe, the world he was on was invaded by the forces of the Adeptus Astartes, who raided the planet in hopes of disrupting the growing orc forces. During the battle, a bolter round tore into Ghazghkull's head, destroying a third of his skull and pulping most of his brain. He was found by the notorious pain boy known as Mad Dog Grotznik, who rebuilt his skull of adamantium, which supposedly enabled Ghazghkull's latent psychic powers. But while the orc's skull was repaired, his brain was not. Despite the sheer insane resilience that orcs have for injury and physical trauma, one must wonder if even an orc could survive an exploding bolt round within the confines of a skull. A standard issue bolter round is .75 caliber and possesses a super dense metallic core and a mass reactive detonator cap. In short, once the round is in the target, the round explodes like a grenade, blowing the target apart from the inside out. Even an orc would have little to no chance of surviving what is effectively a grenade detonating within their brain. Although given this is orc physiology we are talking about, it's certainly not impossible. Orcs also generate a gestalt psychic field around them at all times. With Eldrad being one of the most powerful psykers in the entire galaxy, regardless of species, he could have used his powers to tap into the dead Ghazghkull's own psionic field, and effectively jumpstart his body back to life as a slave puppet now under his control. And seeing how the orc's own psychic field manifests what they believe to be true as being so, seeing Ghazghkull walking around would convince the other orcs that he is in fact alive, allowing Eldrad to leave the orc to his own devices in theory. But an important thing to note is that the Eldar have a brain many times more complex than a human's, and their entire species is known to be highly psychic. Since Eldred is himself one of the most powerful of an entire race of powerful psykers, regardless of Ghazghkull being a zombie or not, he could have been potentially reprogrammed and given a series of instructions into the Orc's mind, which, while resulting in woe and bloodshed for humanity, would render the Eldar safe. So why would Eldred have Ghazghkull attack Armageddon not once, but twice? Armageddon suffered in its history 3 major invasions. While the second and third wars were with the Orcs, the first war were with the forces of Chaos, led by the demon Primarch Angron. It was commonly assumed that Angron's invasion was due to the sudden appearance of a warp storm and the Primarch simply taking advantage. But considering that Armageddon has had 3 major invasions upon its soil, is there something upon the planet that could spell potential doom or salvation for the Eldar race? Something so important that the forces of Chaos would have relished a chance to acquire it. That is a topic for another day. Thanks for watching.